Imagine standing before an enemy that seems impossible to defeat, a towering giant experienced, armed to the teeth, while all you have are empty hands and a heart full of courage. How do you fight a battle where all the odds are against you? This isn't just the story of David against Goliath. This is the story of anyone who has ever felt small in the face of a massive challenge. And believe me, the secret to victory may be where you least expect it. But what if I told you that this story goes far beyond what you've learned? What if the real secret behind David's victory wasn't in his strength, but in something even more powerful? Today, we're going to dive deep into this epic battle and uncover how a simple shepherd became an unlikely warrior, and more than that, how you can apply this strategy to defeat your own giants in real life. To grasp the greatness of this confrontation, we need to go beyond the surface. Forget the idea of a fair fight, because this battle was completely unbalanced. On one side, Goliath, a professional warrior, trained from youth, nearly 10 feet tall, wearing armor that made any attack ineffective. On the other, David, a young man with no military experience, no protection, no sword, and no fear. What did he have that no one else possessed? What made him, in the midst of an entire army paralyzed by terror, the only one courageous enough to step forward? Maybe you're facing a Goliath today, a problem that seems impossible to overcome, a situation that makes you feel small, incapable, unprepared. And the truth is, if you look at the battle only from a human perspective, you might be right. But what if there was another way to see this fight? What if the real secret wasn't in brute strength, but in the way you approach the challenge? David didn't win because he was stronger. He won because he thought differently. He didn't follow the traditional path. He didn't try to fight like other warriors. He used what he already knew, what he mastered, and that changed everything. This strategy not only took down Goliath, but also became the turning point that transformed him from a mere shepherd into a king. And now I ask you, what is your Goliath? What seems too big to defeat today? What has made you hesitate, doubt, or feel afraid? Throughout this video, you will discover that David's true secret wasn't just faith or courage, but something that few people ever notice. Something that can change the way you face life's challenges. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to learn could be the turning point between staying paralyzed by fear or finally finding the courage to defeat your giant. And if this topic has already made you think, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because this story goes far beyond what you might imagine. Now let's go back in time and meet the real David, the boy no one believed could win. Before he was known as a great king, before he was celebrated as a legendary warrior, David was just a boy. A shepherd with no military importance, no recognition, no status. He was the youngest among his brothers, and in the culture of that time, that meant he was last in line for any honor or privilege. If anyone had to name the most unlikely person to become a hero, the answer would be unanimous: David. He wasn't the first to be called when the army needed warriors. In fact, he wasn't even considered. His own brothers were on the front lines of the battle against the Philistines, but he was left behind, tending the animals in the field. The image of David was that of someone insignificant, without potential, someone who could never change the course of a war. But what no one realized was that far from human eyes, he was being prepared for something much greater. And here's a crucial detail. While his brothers trained with swords and shields, David trained in obscurity, facing challenges no one saw. In the silence of the fields, he fought off lions and bears to protect his sheep. With his own hands, he won battles that went unnoticed. And here we find the first major lesson in this story. The battles we fight away from the spotlight are often the ones that prepare us for the challenges that truly matter. But the disregard for David didn't just come from outsiders. Even within his own home, he wasn't taken seriously. When the prophet Samuel was sent to anoint the next king of Israel, he examined David's brothers one by one, strong, tall, and imposing men. yet God rejected each of them. Samuel was confused and asked if there was another son. Only then, almost as an afterthought, David was mentioned. And when he finally appeared, dusty from the fields, God told Samuel, "This is the one." And now picture the scene. David's brothers, battle-ready soldiers, must have looked at him in disbelief. How could a young shepherd be chosen for something so great? But the truth is that God doesn't see as men see. While everyone else focused on outward strength and appearance, God saw something no one else could: a heart prepared to trust, fight, and win. And that disregard for David continued even when he arrived at the battlefield. When he visited his brothers and heard Goliath's threats, he asked the question that would change everything. Who is this giant that dares to defy the army of the living God? His brothers didn't like it. They mocked him, accused him of being arrogant, and told him to go back to tending the sheep. They couldn't understand that this young man, who seemed insignificant, had already fought unseen battles that had prepared him for this moment. How often does this happen in real life? How many times do people doubt you, mock your dreams, and tell you that you're not capable? Maybe you've heard words that crushed your self-esteem, that made you feel small. But here's the crucial point. David didn't let others' opinions define him. He didn't need human approval to know who he was. And now comes the question you need to reflect on. How many times have you given up on something just because someone told you that you couldn't do it? David's story teaches us that what truly matters isn't what others think of you, it's what you believe about yourself. If David had listened to his brothers, he would have gone home, and his story would never have been written. But he chose to ignore the voices of doubt and move forward. And that decision led him to the greatest battle of his life. Now let's meet Goliath and understand why everyone feared this giant. Goliath wasn't just a warrior, he was a living legend. A towering colossus nearly 10 feet tall, covered in bronze armor that gleamed under the sun. His weapons were too heavy for an ordinary man to carry, and his shield was so massive that it had to be borne by an armor-bearer. He wasn't just strong, he was a monster on the battlefield. For 40 days, Goliath taunted the army of Israel. Every morning and every evening, his voice echoed through the valley, mocking the soldiers, humiliating them, daring anyone to face him in single combat. But no one stepped forward. Fear paralyzed even the most seasoned warriors. After all, how do you fight something so imposing? How do you defeat an opponent who seems invincible? And that's exactly how we feel when facing enormous challenges in life. Maybe your Goliath is a financial crisis, a medical diagnosis, or an emotional struggle. Something that seems bigger than you, something that makes you doubt your own strength. When confronted with the impossible, our first instinct is fear. The army of Israel saw Goliath and immediately felt that the battle was lost before it even began. And that is the great trap of giants. They make you believe there's no way out, that you are too small, too weak, too unprepared. Fear distorts reality, turning challenges into insurmountable walls. But the real issue isn't the size of the giant, it's how you see the battle. While everyone looked at Goliath and saw an impossible obstacle, David saw something entirely different. To him, Goliath wasn't an unbeatable warrior. He was just an enemy who had dared to defy the living God. And that changed everything. Here's the great lesson. The problem is never the size of the giant, but the way you perceive the fight. While the soldiers of Israel compared Goliath to themselves and felt small, David compared Goliath to God and saw the giant as insignificant. Perspective changes everything. Fear grows when you look at challenges with the wrong eyes. But when you understand that true strength doesn't come from what's around you, but from what's inside you, the impossible becomes merely a matter of strategy. And now comes the essential question: how did David find the courage to face the giant that everyone feared? The answer lies in what he believed and in what he had already experienced before. Let's now uncover what made David a different kind of warrior. While the entire army of Israel trembled before Goliath, one young man dared to ask a different question. Why isn't anyone facing this giant? To David, fear was not an option. He didn't see Goliath as an unbeatable threat, but as an obstacle that needed to be overcome. But where did this courage come from? How could someone so young, with no military experience, have such confidence? The secret was in his mindset. David didn't decide to fight because he believed in his own strength, but because he trusted in something far greater. While the soldiers saw an invincible enemy, David saw an opportunity to prove that his faith was stronger than any threat. He wasn't focused on the size of the giant, he was focused on the greatness of God, and that vision changed everything. But David's courage didn't come out of nowhere. It was built through the small battles he had already fought. When he was in the fields tending his sheep, no one saw him fighting off lions and bears. No one was there when he put himself between a predator and his flock. But it was there, away from the spotlight, that he learned to trust, to act, and to win. Every challenge he overcame in obscurity prepared him for this moment. And this is one of the most powerful lessons in the story. What defines a true victor is not strength, but mentality. How many times do we face life's challenges with fear, with doubt, questioning if we are capable? But David didn't wait for someone to tell him he could win. He simply believed. And when David stepped forward to fight, even King Saul tried to talk him out of it. He told David that he was just a boy, that he had no experience, that Goliath had been a warrior since his youth. But David responded with something unexpected. He didn't claim to be strong. He didn't boast about his skills. Instead, he spoke about his unseen battles. When a lion or a bear came to steal a sheep, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. And if it turned on me, I killed it. And here's the big question. How many battles have you already won that no one saw? How many times have you overcome something that seemed impossible, and yet you still doubt your ability? David wasn't stronger than the soldiers of Israel. He didn't have better training or superior equipment, but he had something no one else did, a mind trained to believe in victory before the battle even began. So how did David turn that courage into a real strategy for victory? What did he do differently to take down a giant that everyone else feared? The answer lies in the secret no one expected, and that's exactly what we're about to uncover next. When David stepped forward to fight Goliath, no one took him seriously. To King Saul, the only chance this young man had to survive was by wearing heavy armor and wielding a sword. So they tried to equip him like a regular warrior. But something unexpected happened. David rejected it all. He took off the armor, handed back the sword, and chose a path that no one could have imagined. This was the boldest move of the entire battle. While everyone believed that the only way to fight Goliath was to face him on equal terms, David did the exact opposite. He didn't try to imitate experienced warriors. He didn't try to be someone he wasn't. Instead, he used what he already knew, his sling and 5 stones. This decision reveals a powerful principle. Victory isn't about strength, it's about strategy. David knew he couldn't defeat Goliath in hand-to-hand combat. He had never trained with a sword, never worn heavy armor, but he had mastered the art of using a sling. In the fields, he had practiced countless times, hitting targets with deadly accuracy. While the soldiers of Israel saw the battle as a matter of power, David saw it as a matter of skill. He didn't need to be stronger than Goliath, he only needed to be smarter. Here's the secret. We often try to face challenges the same way everyone else does, but true victory comes when we discover what makes us unique. David didn't win because he followed the traditional path. He won because he trusted in what he already knew how to do best. And there's another important detail. He picked up 5 stones. But why? Did he think he would miss his first shots? Did he expect to need more than one hit? No. Goliath had 4 warrior brothers, and David was prepared to fight any other enemy that might come. This proves that he wasn't just confident in his victory, he was ready for any possibility. And this is the great lesson. Preparation and strategy win battles that brute strength cannot. Now, the question was simple. The battle was about to begin. David was ready. He had the courage. He had the strategy. But would that be enough to defeat the giant who had terrorized an entire nation? The entire valley fell silent. On one side, Goliath, massive, overwhelming, certain of his victory. On the other, David, small, unarmored, holding only a sling and 5 stones. To the soldiers of Israel, this wasn't a fight, it was suicide. But to David, it was an opportunity to prove that the impossible doesn't exist when you trust in the right power. Goliath looked at David and laughed. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks and stones?" he mocked. He saw nothing more than a fragile boy, an inexperienced child, and that made him lower his guard. To Goliath, the fight was already over before it even began. But what he didn't realize was that at that very moment, his defeat was already sealed. David didn't respond with fear. He didn't hesitate. He looked the giant in the eyes and declared, "You come against me with a sword, a spear, and a shield, but I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts. Today, he will deliver you into my hands." Here lies the key to victory. David declared his triumph before he even launched the stone. This teaches us something powerful. Many times we face challenges already defeated in our minds. Before even taking action, we doubt ourselves, we give in to fear, we convince ourselves that we're not capable. But David didn't just believe, he spoke it. He declared his victory before it even happened. And then, without wasting a second, he ran toward the giant. This was something no one expected. Everyone assumed that if David had any chance at all, he would wait for Goliath to move first. But no, he advanced, because his faith was greater than any hesitation. In one swift motion, David grabbed a stone, placed it in the sling and spun it with all his might. The air whistled, the stone flew at lethal speed and struck Goliath in the only vulnerable spot, his forehead. The impact was so strong that the giant collapsed to the ground. The impossible had just happened. The undefeated warrior, the terror of Israel, fell with a single blow. And here's the great lesson. Victory begins in the mind before it happens in reality. David didn't win because he was stronger. He won because he believed it was possible. He didn't hesitate, didn't doubt, didn't step back. When everyone else was paralyzed by fear, he was the only one who moved forward. And now, something even more astonishing was about to happen. Because this victory wouldn't just change David's life, it would change an entire nation. What happened after Goliath fell was something no one could have predicted. The sound of the stone striking Goliath's forehead still echoed through the valley when the impossible happened. The giant fell. The most feared warrior of the Philistines was on the ground, motionless. For a moment, silence took over the battlefield. Neither army knew how to react, and then David moved forward. No sword, no armor, no hesitation. He ran to the fallen giant, pulled out Goliath's massive sword, and before everyone's eyes, cut off his head. The Philistine army, which had laughed at the boldness of that young shepherd, was now in complete panic. They couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. The undefeated giant had been slain. And by whom? A boy. In that instant, the fear that had once paralyzed Israel transformed into courage. The same soldiers who had trembled before Goliath now had a new spirit within them. They shouted in victory and charged against the Philistines, who fled in terror. The army that had once been cowering in fear now rose as conquerors. And this is the true greatness of this story. It wasn't just David who won. His courage awakened an entire army. How many times can a single act of faith change everything? How many people around us are waiting for an example to rise up? What happened that day wasn't just a battle won, it was a complete transformation of a nation's mindset. And it all started with one young man who refused to be afraid. David didn't just defeat a giant. He showed an entire nation that the impossible is just an illusion. He proved that strength and power aren't found in weapons, but in how you face your challenges. And this moment was just the beginning. David's name would echo for generations. His victory over Goliath didn't just earn him recognition, it completely changed the course of his life. The forgotten shepherd would become one of the greatest kings Israel had ever known. But now, the real question is, what does this story teach you? How can this battle change the way you face your own giants? The answer lies in what truly made David victorious. And that's exactly the reflection we're about to dive into. David didn't win because he was stronger. He didn't win because he had better weapons. He won because he saw the battle differently. While everyone else saw an invincible giant, he saw an opportunity. While trained warriors stood paralyzed by fear, he chose to take action. And that is the great lesson. The giants we face in life aren't defeated by strength, but by the mindset we adopt when we stand before them. How many times do we look at our challenges like Goliath as something impossible to overcome? How often do we let fear, doubt, and the opinions of others paralyze us? But David's story proves an undeniable truth. It doesn't matter how big the problem is. What matters is the size of your faith and your strategy. David teaches us that victory doesn't happen at the moment of battle. It starts before. It happens when we decide to believe it's possible. When we stop waiting for someone else to solve the problem for us and take initiative. When we trust that our experiences, our skills, and our faith are enough to change the course of history. Now look at your own life. What is the giant you need to face today? What is making you hesitate? Are you waiting until you're stronger, more experienced, more prepared? Or is the only thing missing the courage to act? David proved that the unlikely can win, that the overlooked can surprise everyone, that the one no one believes in can become a king. But the most important question isn't about him, it's about you. Are you ready to take down your Goliath? If this story inspired you, share this video with someone who needs this message today. And tell me in the comments, what is the giant you need to face right now? If you enjoyed this content, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more powerful stories like this one. Because in the end, the only thing standing between you and victory is the decision to believe.